Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute and I feel like I say that every video, but I promise you I have a reason and it'll be more about that later. This video, we're gonna be making a pair of pants. I know I don't make pants. Pants I feel like are a whole different level. It's kind of like you have regular sewing and then like drafting, and like right in between is pants. Like pants. But I attempted to make a pair of pants and it came out really well. And I'm wearing them now. This is my whole outfit that you're going to see later. But yeah, I got this pattern from Mood Fabrics. If you don't know, Mood Fabrics has a tab on their website that says Society. And you can go over there and it's like a full blog and it's got hundreds of free patterns. I am not sponsored by them, but you know, they want to right here. But yeah, they have a bunch of free patterns on there that you can download. They go from sizes 0 to 32. And yeah, so the pattern comes from there today. I will put a link down below with the link, well, with the where to get it, basically. I actually decided these, okay, first let me tell you the name. The name is they're called the touch the stuff. They're called the Stonecress pants, I do believe. And yes, I did make them in the wrong size, but I did fix it later. You'll hear about it. I also made them out of an African fabric, and I will put the link below to the website where I got this fabric. Go support small businesses. You know, it's a really hard time in the economy and everything. So yeah, go check them out. Before I talk too much, let's go ahead and get right into sewing. I was unaware of what size to cut the pattern in because it suggested to go with the finished measurements, but my measurements would have put me in a size 16, which I knew would have just ended in heartbreak. Plus I got thighs and a stomach, so I was going to go with something around a 22 or 24 in body measurements. That being said, I forgot and cut everything out at a size 30, which I had to fix later. Here is everything laid out after assembly and taped together. Make sure you are transferring your markings, especially this one on the pocket, that is going to act as a guide later. I also ran out of fabric and just cut the belt in 2 pieces, leaving a little extra for seam allowance to be sewn together. Start by applying your interfacing to your front band in 4 out of the 8 of your hem bands. I took the time to serge the vertical edges of my pants pieces so I didn't have to do that weird French seam thing. I mean, it's not weird, but it's just not my favorite. For the pleats, I pulled the one side of the box marking in the direction of the arrow to meet the other marking. I pinned and stitched it like they did in the picture, down the edge, catching the folded edge underneath and then across. The front has an optional fly, which I decided to chop off at the sign because I wanted my pants to look like the example. So I went back to my serger, finished the edges of the fly, and matched my 2 front pieces right sides together at the fly seam. Sew them together at the front at 3/8 of an inch, ending 3/8 before the crotch seam. Open up the seam allowance and press. Finish, sew, and press the center back seam the same way as the front seam. Fold the top edge of the back of the pants down by 1/2 of an inch and press. I drew a line around 2 inches away from the top on the right side of the pants as a guide. Then I folded the edge on that line towards the inside and pressed. Pin the folded edge close to the stitching and sew as close to the folded edge as possible. Mark 1 inch up from the bottom folded edge you just sewed and stitch again at that 1 inch mark. This will be your casing. Taking the belt loop piece, fold lengthwise and pin. Sew up that unfinished edge at 3/8 of an inch. Trim the seam allowance and flip it right side out. Then press your piece flat. The piece has markings for what size the loop should be, but the instructions say cut at 2.5 inches. So I decided to go with the markings, which measured at around 2 1/4 inch which may or may not have an impact on the belt fitting through it. We shall see. Cut those, and there will be a few left over that you will use later. Fold up the edges of the loops, making sure there's enough space so that the casing can go through it, and press. Then pin them onto the pants by placing one at the center back. The others will be spaced 6 inches apart, or however far you feel like you want them to be. Stitch the loops into place across the top and bottom folded edges, making sure you're not sewing into the casing channel. Now take your elastic, which should be half your waist, but stretches enough to fit over your hips, and feed it through the channel with the safety pin. Once it's reached the other side, pin it at both ends of the channel so it won't escape, and the edges will be sewn in the seam allowance later. The pockets had these markings on the pattern that needed to be transferred, and the other side had nothing. You're going to match the pocket, right sides together, with the front part of the pants with the unmarked edge of the pocket. Once that is pinned down, sew with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance, fold the pocket inside, and press. Flipping to the inside, fold the pocket so that the marked line we transferred matches the edge of the folded pocket edge like this. Pin the top and the side seam of the pocket into place. From here, you will take the bottom of the pocket and sew it closed, as close to the side edge as possible without sewing into the pants. Base stitch the top and side of the pocket to the pants and repeat with the other pocket on the other side. Take the interface front waistband and fold it in half to create a crease, which I used as the center front. Pin the band to the right side of the pants, matching centers, and stitch it into place. Flip the band up and press it in the seam allowance away from the pants. On the inside, you will see the markings, which are a guide for your belt loops. On the right side, pin and stitch your loops according to the markings on the front of the band, just like you did for the back of the band. After the loops are sewn, take the front facing and pin it to the right side of the front waistband, sewing across the top. Trim the seam, flip the facing to the inside, and press. Slip stitch or sew in the ditch the facings down. As you can see, I tried to sew in the ditch, but I hated the look of it. You could definitely see the thread. I bit my tongue in the middle of saying that. You can definitely see the thread. So I switched over to hand stitching, and it wasn't too bad. Like, it kind of made it invisible from the outside, which I appreciated. Pin the front to the back, right sides together at the crotch seam, and stitch. You will match your notches and occasionally have to stretch your fabric for fit. Pin and stitch the outside of your pants together as well. For both of the ankle tabs, I took them and folded them in half and cut them in half, making 4 equal pieces. For one pair, you will fold lengthwise and sew it. Then you'll trim, flip it inside out, and press. For the other side, you'll fold lengthwise and then stitch across and down the long edge like this. You'll trim and flip that and press it as well. Pair each tab with the opposite. Take one pair of your interfaced Tim bands, placing one face up, placing the tabs in the middle, and pinning the other hem piece face down. So your tabs are now sandwiched between, and you'll sew across the edge. Do the same thing in much of a mirror image as the other to the other hemband. Then you'll go back in and sew the other edge together without catching the tabs in the seam. Take your tab with the unfinished edge, slip 2 D-rings into it, and double fold the ends over the rings and stitch, close to the rings. At the leg opening, sew your 2 pleats the same way as the waist, following the directional pointers from the pattern. These were probably my favorite pleats. I don't know why, but they were just really pretty. And I love that blue thread. Now I tried everything on, and with the hemband as well. As you can see, the legs were too long, mostly because I made the wrong size, so the legs needed to be tapered in. If I left it, the tabs would be too long, and the hem was too wide, and the legs slouched. It was just a mess. I'm really sorry for the blur. It's hard to record yourself, but here, I have found some socks. And I also hemmed and fixed one leg, and it turned out amazing. I also tapered the whole leg to fix my sizing issue. As you'll see, I took in quite a lot of the leg as a whole and followed the curve up to right below my pocket. I even separated the front from the back and took off about 1/2 inch from each side of the back piece as to not mess up my front pocket. Back to the cuffs, I cut off the excess length to fit my alterations. I also cut off some of the tab length as well. You'll pin the band to the edge of the leg of your pants, right sides together, and stitch. Make sure the tabs are free and not cut in the seam. The leg opening ended up being a lot wider than the cuff, which I fixed by sewing 2 gathering stitches in the unpleated side. I pulled the strings to get rid of the extra fullness and pinned, then stitched the whole cuff into place. Trim the seam, flip down the cuff, and press. Take the cuff facings and stitch them in the same way as the other cuffs without the tabs. Pin the facings to the cuff, right sides together, and stitch. Turn the facings inside the cuff and press. Then slip stitch or stitch the cup in place on the inside of the pants. Finally, we got the belt, which I had sewn together to make one continuous piece, but you won't have to do that if you had one single piece. Fold the belt in half lengthwise and stitch. I learned my lesson and didn't close one end and just flipped it like normal. Then I trimmed the seam, flipped it, and pressed the belt flat. I turned in the end a bit to make a fake finished edge because I learned from the tabs, ain't nobody got time to be trying to flip with one end closed. And it looked fine as far as I'm concerned. I then took another 2D ring, slipping it onto the unfinished edge of the belt and stitched, just like the tabs on the hembands. I put the belt on the pants and they looked freaking adorable. Let's see how they look on me. For some reason, I'm all about the 1980s right now. My mom rolls her eyes at me because she grew up through it. But this fabric is just so cute and it's so graphic and it works really well with these pants, this whole outfit. It's just, I have never been in love more with an outfit ever. And yeah, I just make these pants. That's all I can say. The biggest mistake that I can say that I did was I made the wrong size. And one of the cuffs, if you didn't see, is on backwards. But that's all on me. But it was really easy to make. The instructions were actually really easy to understand. Like, it was, I couldn't ask for more, honestly. And the fabric was really easy to sew with. It didn't fray a lot. It's just really good quality. I would say African fabrics because they are from an African realtor. I'm sorry, am I selling houses? Store. I'm gonna say store. Where have I been, you may ask? Well, I got an ear infection during the time which I was sewing this, and I couldn't hear for 2 days. Basically, for 2 weeks, I had an ear infection and I couldn't hear, and it was really disheartening and really depressing. And then I was on medication for it that made me also depressed and have mood swings. So I had 3 weeks of mood swings, and then 2 days of complete silence from an ear infection. And then, so recently I got off the pills and I feel so much better. And if you've ever been depressed or had mood swings from pills, you understand that you don't want to do anything. You're angry at everybody. I'm up here screaming at cats, screaming at dogs for just looking at me wrong. I was just not about life for a minute. But I am back. I am happy to be back, happy to hear. And yeah, I'm trying to outrun the battery dying on this camera because I just don't feel like charging it. It needs to learn how to self-sustain. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I have all the links to everything down below, including my social media sites, which are Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. If you have any questions, write them down below. Please show Mood Fabric some love so they can continue to make free patterns for everybody. And yeah, if you make these, please tag me on Instagram at SoManiacal. And we did get a name change. I am now just SoManiacal, which I like a whole lot better. And please like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. If you're new here, what's up? Say hey below. And if you're not new here, say hey below anyways. Like, I thoroughly enjoy communicating with people. I am a people person. So that sounds really aggressive. A people person. Anyways, I will see you folks next time. Have a good day.